We're talking about X Factors in the Eastern Conference Finals. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think you gotta look at J.R. Smith. Now, there are many versions of J.R., okay? There is throwing soup J.R. Smith. There is untying shoelaces J.R. Smith. But I think all the Cavaliers are going to be worried about in this series is the good at basketball J.R. Smith, who is a player in a version of JR that has popped up for them numerous times in the postseason over the years. And we are now currently seeing the good version of J.R. Smith, the guy who was not present for a decent amount of this regular season, but I think showed some good things in the Raptors series that they just finished up. A big thing is JR's defense, because I think he's athletic enough and strong enough to be at least a not bad NBA defender. And then offensively, he's pretty much always a good catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. He was among the league leaders in that category, and, you know, when you got LeBron James and more shooting on your team for a lot of spacing, he's going to get some good looks. But that's the name of the game with JR. Be a 3-and-D player. I mean, if you can have one game in this series where you go back to 6th man of the year JR on the Knicks, shout out to Steve Novak, then that would be awesome. But all these guys really need JR to do is just make the right play. However, when he is not in that mindset and when he is not making the right play, it can get pretty ugly, and JR can sometimes play himself off the court. Hopefully, for the Cavs' sake, that's not what actually happens. My gut feeling is he'll be pretty okay. At least on the offensive side of the floor, I do think there is some risk defensively, which we will talk about, and I will show an example of what that looks like. But the other thing this does is when JR is playing well, it makes the Cavs impossible to defend, because you've already got LeBron, who's going to get into the defense, and I know Brad Stevens is going to draw up the ultimate math problem to deal with LeBron being who he is. But even then, the dude's still going to do his thing. And with the amount of shooters that Cleveland has between, like, George Hill or even sometimes Jose Calderon at the point guard position, you got Kevin Love, who has been coming alive lately, getting a bigger role in the Cavaliers' offense. Kyle Korver is Mr. Reliable in the NBA, if you ask me. And then you have JR to add to that. I mean, Boston's defense is just going to be going, what the hell do we do? But now we got to go to the flip side. JR, when it's not going well, it can get pretty ugly. He can sometimes just make some questionable basketball decisions. Maybe he thinks he's a little better on offense than he really is. But the other thing is his defense can get pretty ugly. And I do think his on-ball defense is a safer bet than his team defense. But, I mean, I don't think JR was helping things this season with how bad Cleveland was on that side of the floor, you know? I think he, at his very best, can be average, but he's not the type of guy who's going to make the team better if things are not going well. And if anything, he could kind of fall into the sinkhole of, well, we suck on defense, so I'm going to give like 6% less effort or whatever. So there's a chance that Boston could just eat him alive, and Brad Stevens could find ways to focus him, and I mean, maybe the Cavaliers would have to think about taking him off the floor at times. But again, we've seen JR step it up defensively. I think this previous series against the Raptors, he was pretty okay, especially against DeRozan. And then there's also, sometimes JR likes to shoot a little too much. Instead of just being an off-ball player, moving the ball around, making the right play, sometimes he'll commandeer the offense for a couple possessions here and there, take a three-pointer that he shouldn't really take, and you don't want that, of course. Now, if he's going to make a few of these in, cool, and I think he's always due to make a couple, but let's keep the usage rate relatively down for your Cavs in this series, JR. And now the other guy we're going to talk about, Marcus Morris of the Boston Celtics. It was tough for me to pick an X factor for Boston because their whole team is an X factor. But the reason I went with Morris is because I think he has maybe the lowest ceiling or the lowest floor compared to how high his ceiling can be. You saw there previously he hit an isolation bucket, and we'll talk about that. But I think a big thing here is that he's going to be defending LeBron a decent amount of the time. Now, not all the time, and I don't think that there's going to be a primary LeBron defender. I think the Celtics are going to throw a lot of different things at him. But I do think Marcus Morris is going to get his shot, and I would like to think that his size could potentially defer LeBron a little bit. I mean, no one's going to stop the guy, of course, but I think Morris, if he could slow LeBron down a little teeny bit, that could be enough to where Boston could stretch this out to an extra game or potentially even win the thing. I mean, at this point, I'm convinced that Brad Stevens can achieve world peace, so if he just gets a little help from Marcus Morris on defense, then they might win the series. But the other thing with Morris offensively is he likes to go ISO, and it's not even like he's horrible at it. I think he was in like the 60th percentile in the NBA in terms of ISOs, and he was around the same area in terms of post-ups. But I think that style can go bad quickly, and the fear is, like, how many contested two-pointers are you going to shoot? How many turnaround jumpers? How many just step backs? How many possessions are you going to kind of steal because you want to get, like, your Carmelo Anthony on? And that could also be the type of thing that loses the Celtics a game. I think for the season, his net rating was, like, slightly negative, which I don't think is the end-all, be-all in how good he was for the Celtics this year, because he hit some big shots for them. But still, the dude does have some ugly moments. Now, what does good Marcus Morris look like? Well, number one, he apparently wears a headband. I mean, I think there's evidence out there that shows he's actually been a pretty decent LeBron defender, because he's pretty strong, and he's got the height and all that to deal with it. And he can still make an impact on offense. It's just he has to be willing to kind of flow within the Brad Stevens thing, which he's been willing to do this year. I just hope that he doesn't commandeer it a little bit for his couple of extra ISO possessions a game. But if he gets switched onto a smaller guy like George Hill right there on a post-up, oh yeah, go for it. You know, do your post-up thing that you like to do sometimes. A big thing with the Celtics is I don't know how many guys they can have that don't play well for them to have a chance against the Cavs, right? Because Cleveland, they do have a little bit of leeway because when you got LeBron James, things just work themselves out. But this Boston team, they don't have all the bodies in the world to go to. So if Marcus Morris has himself a rough series where he takes bad shots and he's not able to really make a difference at all on LeBron, that could be the difference, you know?